Hi everyone, welcome to Dev Brew. This is where indie developers send their games and I do my best to give feedback on their game design. My name is Devon, and today we're going to take a look at Profit Motive, the epic business RPG. It was developed by Edenworks and submitted to us by Kassan Wright. From what I've played, this game is an open world, turn-based RPG, where you play as a guy named Myron Meckler, who tries to grow a business from the ground up in a place called Market Town. The gameplay consists of building up your stats with networking, business agreements, and small favors so that you can win in business battles. Pretty interesting. The footage that you're seeing is from the most recent demo of the game, as of this recording. And if you want to find out more, there is a link in the description. Let's do this. Got my coffee. I'm recording this at like 11 at night. So this is decaf. I'm sorry, decaf coffee, blasphemy, how dare you. If you didn't catch on what the game is, the epic business RPG, the whole, my wife just texted me. Thank you, Aim. This game basically works as a regular, traditional RPG, except instead of fantasy elements, you have business elements. Instead of battling people, instead of, trying to kill them, you're a business person who's trying to convince the other person of something. So it feels like what I would call a palette swap or a skin, where you usually have hit points and magic, but instead you have a goal, that you have to convince somebody of. Instead of magic, you have cash. So right here is an example. This is kind of later on in the game, but as you can see, this is Myron. This is who you're playing as. And this is the person you're pitching to. So you're just pitching a project to them. And, they both look like nice people. It's not something that you're not trying to kill anybody. It's not a fearsome battle. It's just a conversation, but it's treated like a fearsome battle. There's some stuff that doesn't quite make sense in the terminology. Like right here, it says attempting to attack power. So it doesn't always, line up precisely. So the way this works, instead of health, you have this goal meter is what this is called. And what happens is you start in the center, and the more that you convince them of something, the more this meter crawls, over toward their side. And the more they convince you of something, or the more they fight back, the more the meter crawls onto your side. So you're trying to get the meter all the way up on their side before the end of the turns. You have a certain amount of turns per battle that you're doing. The gameplay is still pretty much the same as any other RPG. It's like right here, critical hit. And now I'm in fog because I'm vulnerable. So right here you see we have attack, we have tactics, charge, attack, skills, guard, So these are all just regular things that you would have in a fantasy RPG, except it's about a business, and that's how the game works. So anyway, upon playing this game, I really liked seeing all of the traditional turn-based stuff, but changed into this business thing. It was really interesting. When I sat down to write this episode, however, I was at a loss for words because I didn't really know what to say. The reason why is because if you noticed during my last episode, I said that I don't really like dungeon crawlers, and I think the reason why, or at least the dungeon crawlers I was thinking of maybe, is because I don't like slower paced games. I don't like games that have to do with managing resources or stat building. That kind of stuff throws me off. My mind doesn't really work that way. So I don't play a lot of RPGs. So I sat down to write, giving game design advice for this RPG, and I couldn't think of anything because, I haven't played many RPGs. It's not my field of expertise at all. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to analyze my experience a little bit, and I'm going to try to analyze my feelings of the game. And hopefully that will help in some way or another. At least you'll get to find out, from my perspective, what this game did, to a player like me. That being said, let's look at what I thought worked in the game. One thing I really like about RPGs is their, I want to say, free player agency. Now, player agency is defined as a lot of different stuff. I asked this question on Reddit about what is player agency to you, and I got all kinds of definitions. So to me, I'm going to define it as the connection that the player has with the avatar, like the amount of control they feel like they actually have in the game control being more than just controlling their movements and stuff, but how much they feel like they're responsible for the events that play out. Usually the worlds are just kind of just big open worlds that you then go around and interact with people. And what's really nice about that is that you as a player, you're motivated by your own curiosity about what you think you're gonna do next, and so you decide to go that way, you decide to talk to this person, decide to do that. And because of that, you are building agency, right? You're building like this kind of connection with the character, this thing that you don't usually get in like a game like I don't know, like Call of Duty, for example. You really feel like you're them in those kinds of situations because they're motivated by you, because they're motivated by what you choose to do. So I think that's really cool. So personally, when I was playing this game, I felt like I was connected to Myron. All the stuff that he was doing, I felt like I was right there with him. You know, that I was the one who decided to do those things. And for the most part, that was what was happening. And I thought that was pretty cool. Okay, so another thing that I really liked, I really don't know if this was intentional, but I thought it was really cool. This is the first part of the game right here. You pop up and you start controlling Myron, and as you can see right here, this is a big thermometer looking gauge. What is that? This is your promotion meter. Now, this is really interesting. The meter is present in other parts of the game, but I'm gonna throw up a spoiler warning right here. So, spoilers. What happens later on in the game is you get fired from this company. And it's not that much later. The vice president betrays you and frames you for something, and then you ended up getting fired. And then you start all over basically. You start a whole business by yourself. But right here, you're utilizing this meter here to try to get promoted. But it doesn't ever fill up. You do get some points from winning some battles, but I don't think you ever get all of the points. At least it's very, I don't think anyone does that on their first try, at least. I don't think it's even possible to get all, promoted all the way. This thermometer here, even though it's not actually going to help you in the long run, even though it doesn't actually mean anything, the game designer still put it here and basically let the player know, hey, you're working toward a promotion, which puts me in the same mindset as Myron is. So they didn't have to do that, because the thermometer doesn't really mean anything at this moment, because I'm not going to get a promotion, but the fact that it's there puts me in the same mindset as Myron. The only reason why it's there is to connect with the player, and I think that's really cool. Another thing I really like, but this isn't really, I don't know if this is a design really. So right here it says, you provide the best and worst case expense breakdowns to see which one the client prefers. Your guard is up. I really like that kind of text to kind of explain what it is that you're doing in the RPG. Again, because this is basically just a palette swap, because you're just attacking and defending, you don't really know what you're doing in the business world, translated into business. And so you have like these little, text blurbs here that say exactly what you're doing. And it made me smile quite a bit when I see something like, the VP distracts Mrs. Primgard with imaginative analogies. She's prevented from attacking for 2 rounds. It's just fun to me that it says to me that this person really cared about the game. And there's a lot of this kind of text. Like, I think this text, this kind of custom text right here, that it explains exactly what it is you're doing. It doesn't have any real world purpose. It's just kind of showing the player kind of what they're doing. But the text is different for every single battle, at least from what I've played. It doesn't look like they ever reuse the same text, which is kind of crazy to me. Now I'm going to talk about what things that I thought needed some work. So you have to take what I'm going to say with a bit of salt, because again, I'm inexperienced when it comes to RPGs, and I'm just analyzing my feelings here. So the first thing is this palette swap itself. It made me more invested, honestly. Like, I wouldn't have played this game, or I wouldn't have much cared for this game if it was just another, fantasy RPG. And it's cool because, it does actually bring my attention into these things. However, I think the way it does it is a bit weird. Usually if you have a palette swap, something like this, if you put just a simple skin over the mechanics, but the mechanics are basically the same, you're usually saying something about the mechanics. What I mean by that is that you're commenting on their nature. It's usually some sort of satirizing that's happening, or a parody that's happening. And that's the only reason why you would copy them completely, right? It does have a different battle system, like you have a goal meter as opposed to a health meter, but basically it's the same. You're basically going through the same. motions. Like when I was playing this game, I was legit like just, pressing keys like, okay, get to attack. Okay, now go to my skills. Okay, now do that. Like as if I was playing Final Fantasy. I was just going through those menus really quick. It didn't feel any different. It didn't feel like, okay, what should I argue next? Or what kind of mock-ups should I give to the client next? That was never in my mind. I was just all about, well, what should I attack? When should I defend? When should I guard? Stuff like that. So I felt like it didn't really provide anything different other than it was, a neat thing to see. It was neat, and that was pretty much it. I felt like the mechanics at this point should either be satirizing, should either be saying something about the mechanics themselves, or they should provide a good metaphor. And I don't think these provide a good metaphor. I think it's just a fun thing to do. I don't think it's actually trying to provide any kind of metaphor or any kind of comment, but I think it could have. And I think that's where I didn't like it, is that I wanted something deeper. I wanted it to comment on something. I wanted it to say something about it. Because I kept giggling, when it would say the client attempted to find additional faults with the project, but you retaliated using convincing data. I think that's just fun. I giggled at all that stuff, but again, it's just kind of fun. And then when you keep reading that, over and over throughout a bunch of different battles, when it says the customer mentions that he can only pay credit card, like it's fun, and I like seeing it, and I like seeing them that they're different all the time. That's really interesting, but it's only that. I wish it was more. I wish it was deeper. It might be just a me thing. I just wish it did something more, more interesting with the mechanics at hand. So the other thing I want to talk about is this kind of mission style kind of gameplay. But the demo only covers the first chapter, so I'm not sure if this is relevant in like the entire scheme of the game, but I feel like this is kind of like a slice of the game. So with that said, we have a map, and in the map we have different missions. And so we have the open world missions, which are all these blue stars, and then the story missions, which is the gold stars. So mostly in open world games, in games that have like a lot of things to do in them, you have missions, which are fine. They're a way to guide the player into a direction that you want them to go. In mission-based games like Grand Theft Auto or Spider-Man and Red Dead Redemption, you have missions because there's so much to do in the game, and the world is so deep that you can do a lot of different stuff that it makes sense to try to guide the player in the direction that you want them to go. And the way you do this is by saying, go to this point when you're done doing whatever it is that you're doing, so that we can continue the story. And I think that works for games like those. But in a game like this, there's not a whole lot to do. In the game, you're pretty much walking around. You can talk to people, and they'll give you some items sometimes. You can get business contacts, and you can do like little one-off side mission kind of stuff. But they're all pretty short, they're all pretty small, and they don't involve a whole lot of action. There's like some things that happen. Like I think the longest thing that I did was overflowed a toilet, which I thought was really cool. I didn't expect that at all. And so what happens is when I'm going from mission to mission, or when one story mission stops and the next one starts, the time in between those missions, I don't really feel like I'm doing anything. It feels like the story is being artificially slowed, and it shouldn't feel that way, right? It should feel like I have so much to do. It should feel like the game is so overrun with so much stuff that I have to focus on the story mission or just doing some other stuff. But this game kind of feels like you're playing like Pokemon, for example. That's a game that comes to mind because I haven't played many other RPGs, but I have played Pokemon. So in Pokemon, there's not a whole lot of things to do, right? I mean, there are some things. You can talk to people in towns, you can heal Pokemon and buy different items in shops and stuff like that, but there's not a whole lot. So what you do for most of the game is explore, and then every now and then you hit a story relevant mechanic. But if you played Pokemon, or at least the older ones, you'll see that there's no missions in them. And the reason why is because they're using a different kind of motivation for the player to continue the story forward. They're using something like lock and key mechanisms or object collection mechanisms. And so what I mean by that is like the gym badges, for example, in Pokemon are objects that you have to collect and then they're artificially barriered for you. So like one gym might be inaccessible because you need a Pokemon to do a certain move in order to reach that gym, or one gym might be too high of a level for you, so you have to go and battle, try to build up your experience before you get to them, and then you can beat them. That kind of stuff, it puts the responsibility on the player. And so that's what I feel like this game is missing, is that it feels like they're missing the responsibility factor. It feels like when I'm in the story mission, I'm just going from story node to story node to story node. I don't feel like I'm doing it by myself. I feel like I'm obligated to do it. And it feels like I just have to go to the next story mission because that's what I gotta do. Now, what I did like about this was when there was a little bit more of an object collection thing going on. You'll notice in the open world missions there with all the blue stars, when I started doing those battles, I would go to one person, talk to that person, complete the battle, and then it said, completed 1 out of 9 battles. And I was like, oh, hey, automatically I was like, oh, that's the responsibility factor that I need, right? I now have 8 other battles that I can go get. Again, I'm not saying that story missions are bad. I just think they should be used for games that have a ton of content in it, like just too much content or too deep of content to do. Stuff like Skyrim, stuff like Grand Theft Auto or The Witcher 3, just games that have a massive amount of content so that you have to focus on one thing. So I think something that would help this game is something like an object collecting, or a lock and key thing. Another lock and key thing that I think really works is in Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. When you first wake up and you're wandering around the island, you have like this huge cliff that you're on called the plateau, and you can't get off the cliff without killing yourself. So that would be the block, is you can't get off of this place, you need something else. So it's a player responsibility thing that the player says, well, I can't do this until I do this other thing, so I better go do that. I like that, because the player is, taking agency. The player is holding themselves responsible. They don't feel obligated to do a certain thing. They might, depending on the player, but this person here, I didn't feel that connected to this kind of gameplay. So I hope that was in some way helpful. Again, I'm sorry that I wasn't, more experienced with this kind of game, but I will be looking more into RPGs. I mean, I was just, this kind of game actually got me more into them, and I went on like a whole big study. I studied just a bunch of games after playing this, and that's why this video is coming out a little bit late, is because I was going on a big old study run. I was like, I don't know anything about RPGs. I gotta look into more of them. Thank you for submitting your game, and I hope I did something here that was interesting. If you are not the person who submitted this game, and you do have a game that you want me to do the same thing with, maybe not this exact same thing, but something, if you want some game design feedback, then you can submit the game. There's a submission link in the description. Use that, and there will be a future episode dedicated to you. Do know, however, that right now, as of this recording, I have episodes up until late September. So that's all I got for today, and I hope that is awesome. If you made it to the end of this video, you have to let me know, how do you like my sound? Is my sound different? I'm using a different microphone. So I heard some people talk about my vocal fry that was happening a little bit because my voice and the other microphone that I have don't really mix well together. So is this better? I think it's better. I haven't heard it yet, but I think it's better. Anyway, I'm gonna go play more games, I guess. That sounded bad. I gotta play more games, I guess. Dang. Oh, playing video games. Ugh. Decaf coffee. Ugh.